Hello, hello. Question: should presidents have pardon power? Yay or nay? Quick thumbs up or thumbs down. Should presidents have pardon power? Give me an instant reaction to that question. As a matter of fact, I can tell you from the initial voting, when I clicked in and 100 people had voted, it was running 55-45. At this exact moment in time, 50.06 to 49.94. We'll see if that holds. Please like and subscribe and set up notifications. Whether your team scores or not, there's always another way to win in Michigan. People licking their wounds in Michigan over that Detroit football outcome. Wow, last weekend. Play Gun Lake online casino and sportsbook app still has you covered. Play Gun Lake, the only app that I ever use and recommend to bet sports and to play all my favorite casino games for real money. Get some skin in the game, bet sports, play blackjack, craps, poker, roulette, hot online slots while watching the game. Make your downtime fun time. They've got some new online slots. Test your strength, Lucky Tap, the Jack-O-Lantern Jackpots, and the Almighty Sevens Jackpot Royale. Double down on fourth down, play with a live dealer. That's kind of fun. Freaky the first time you do it. You're like, wow, that's a live person. Download the app right now and enjoy all the action and excitement from the casino at your fingertips. New users download the app and get up to $1,000 casino bonus back. If you're down in the first 24 hours, that bonus has got to be wagered. PlayGunLake.com. They've got the details. You've got to be 21 and in Michigan for the Play Gun Lake online casino and sportsbook app. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Pardon me. I feel like that should be those should be the first words out of my mouth today. Or how about this? F it. Just release them all. Axios, Mark Caputo reporting that as Trump's team wrestled with the pardon issue for the J6ers, the president-elect, now president, said, F it, just release them all. And that's what he did. And for all of the actions in the first 24 hours of this Trump 2.0, the pardon of the J6ers has gotten the most reaction, and appropriately so. I said yesterday, and I've said consistently, my view is that anybody involved in violence, it should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Anybody involved in violence on January 6th, and my standard is also anyone who crossed the threshold of the building. In those two instances, I don't think they should be granted clemency. I don't think that they should be given a pardon. I don't think that they should have their sentences commuted. And I believe that if he were going to look at all the events of January 6th, it should have been on a case-by-case basis. But instead, it was a blanket commutation, a blanket pardon for everybody, 1,500 or so. I think 6 were treated differently. And I believe that the reason that they were handled this way, and I'm not defending it because I think it was a mistake, is that they didn't want to invest the time and the effort necessary to scrutinize 1,500 files when there are so many other things that President Trump is now seeking to do early on in his second term. The cognitive dissonance of his supporters is huge. This ability to overlook contradiction. I'll give you a great example. This morning early, I'm riding to work, coming into the SiriusXM studio, and I'm listening, as I routinely do, to a lot of different outlets as I'm making my drive, and I'm tuned in on SiriusXM's app to different of the cable outlets, getting a feel for the news, getting a feel for the spin. And I am listening in the 5 a.m. hour to Fox News, and they have a congressman on from New Jersey. I think it was Jeff Van Drew. Don't hold me to that. I'm 83% sure that's who it was. But this New Jersey congressman that I was listening to on Fox News is touting his amendment to the Laken-Riley Act, which goes back to the House today because it was modified by the Senate. Laken-Riley, of course, killed by a migrant. There's a bill in her name, and it says that if you're here illegally and you commit a crime, you're going to be deported, okay? So this congressman was touting the fact that his amendment is now a part of the bill, and his amendment says if you're involved in violence against law enforcement, then you are immediately shipped out of the country. Okay, that makes sense, right? Do any of us argue that, originally you came to the country illegally, now you're involved in violence against a member of law enforcement? Of course that makes sense. The appropriate follow-up was to say, and today we are talking about President Trump's pardon of 1,500 J6ers. What about those who were involved in violence against law enforcement? But of course, it was left unsaid. I think that the pardon of all of the J6ers in sweeping fashion is wrong for two reasons. The obvious, and that is that certain among them really were involved in insurrection. And that's obvious, at least to me. But secondly, the message that it sends. I mean, you are now giving these individuals and people who have a similar thought process license to act this way again, thinking that President Trump is going to have their back. The Washington Post has a great story today. It says this: President Donald Trump defended his decision to free all of the roughly 1,600 J6 defendants as the leaders of two extremist groups who played outsized roles in the Capitol attack walked out of federal prisons after serving a fraction of their sentences. But counterterrorism experts say the pardons could further embolden fringe groups and hamper the Justice Department's fight against political violence. I totally believe that. And then it goes on to talk about Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio headed home to Miami from a Louisiana prison, expected to address the media. 22 years he was given, the longest sentence of the riot, for mobilizing his right-wing group as an army to keep Trump in power. And then there's Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes. He was sentenced to 18 years. So these are the two most prominent among them. Extremism researchers raise concerns over the message their freedom sends to armed militia-style groups or others with violent anti-government views. That's the worry that I have, because now they believe, I'm thinking like Branch Davidian's Randy Weaver kind of stuff. They think that Trump's got their back. And why wouldn't they think that? Because he did just have their back. Interesting polling data: 2/3 of Americans opposed pardons for people convicted of crimes in the riot. This is Washington Post, University of Maryland data. But among Republicans, if you're thinking to yourself, wow, Trump is really taking a hit on this, hold on. Strong majorities of Republicans, 60%, and Trump voters, 69%, approve of the pardons, which I find shocking. Check out the Wall Street Journal lead editorial on this issue today, because it's not just about Enrique Tarrio and Rhodes. It talks about some of the others whose names are not household words. I'll give you one example. Daniel Joseph DJ Rodriguez, sentenced to 151 months, who can be seen on video, federal prosecutors say, deploying an electroshock weapon against a policeman who was dragged out of the defensive line by plunging it into the officer's neck the night before he promised in a MAGA chat group, "There will be blood." Or William Lewis, given 37 months, sprayed streams of wasp and hornet killer spray at multiple police officers on 4 distinct occasions, forcing several to flee the line and seek treatment for their eyes. I could go on and on and on with all of these different examples. There are so many of them. So people are upset. Some people are upset about the J6 pardons. I'm one of them. It's no surprise. We polled on this issue on January 6th and asked where the Justice Department under Trump would not be continuing with these prosecutions, should they continue nonetheless. This is just like 2 weeks ago. And 72.95% of our audience said continue with them. So I've already polled on the issue at Smerconish.com as to prosecution of the J6 participants. I know where our voting and calling audience stands on that issue. I recognize that there's a school of thought out there that some who didn't breach the Capitol and weren't involved in violence, nonetheless, were subject to prosecutions that were over the top. Okay, for those people, we can have a conversation. But my standard: violence, or if you entered the building, no clemency, no commutation, no pardon. Are we clear on that? Yes, we are. Okay, I'm asking something different today. My poll question today at Smerconish.com asks whether presidents should have pardon power generally. Yesterday's poll question was whether people were of the opinion that Joe Biden was justified on his way out the door in pardoning 5 of his family members. And 2/3 said they believed that he was. More than 32,000 voted. I disagree with that. I don't think that he was justified. I don't like what Biden did on his way out the door. I don't like what Trump did when he came in the door. Both were wrong. And by the way, I'm not overlooking Biden's prior commutations for 1,500 individuals, and I don't mean the very last act. I mean that group about a week in advance of leaving the White House, which included the Cash for Kids judge from Pennsylvania. The 17-year prison sentence of Michael Conahan angered a lot of Pennsylvanians, especially in northeastern Pennsylvania, who have followed that case, including Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro said with regard to the judge who had served the vast majority of his sentence, but Biden then commuted it. Josh Shapiro, I do feel strongly that President Biden got it absolutely wrong and created a lot of pain here in northeastern Pennsylvania. This was a scandal that impacted so many kids and so many families. And then something else that hasn't gotten a lot of attention, and even outgoing FBI Director Stephen Wray went on record relative to Leonard Peltier, who was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents in the 1970s, and President Biden, on his way out the door, commuted his life sentence. So many people, I sense many people are like, well, it was okay what Biden did for his family, but it's not okay what Trump did for the J6ers. I don't like any of it. And there have been other controversies, but not at this level with other presidents. President Obama. Do you remember that President Obama commuted the jail sentence for WikiLeaks figure Chelsea Manning? Bill Clinton, do you remember Mark Rich? Do you remember Roger Clinton? There have always been cases like this. And many are asking online, why do we have it? Why do we have a pardon power for presidents? I'm asking today in our poll question whether we should continue to have it. It's a vestige of the system we left. It's a vestige of Britain. It's a vestige of the king. The king had pardon power. And in our case, it was believed that it was necessary as an additional check on branches of government, most notably the executive branch having a check, less so on the legislative branch, but on the judiciary. And that's why we have it as a recourse for a judicial mistake, or for, and these may be one and the same, or punishment that has been too harsh. I'll tell you something interesting. The anti-federalists had gripes with the pardon power. And as I did some reading in last night, just on the whole history of Article 2, Section 2, where the president is given, quote, the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. After the Constitution was drafted in the summer of 1787, it had to be ratified by at least 9 of the states before it would take effect. This became a point of contention. But listen to this one paragraph of history. On the afternoon of Wednesday, June 18, 1788, George Mason rose from his chair on the floor of the Virginia Ratifying Convention, deeply troubled by what he thought of the convention's failure to understand the President of the United States might not always be someone of sound character and high intelligence. There would rarely, if ever, he reminded the delegates, be a commander-in-chief with the courage and rectitude displayed by George Washington during the War of Independence. There might even be a president who would try to change our form of government. The president, argued Mason, ought not to have the power of pardoning because he may frequently pardon crimes which were advised by himself. Wait a minute. I have to read that back to you. Now I have your attention, right? This is George Mason in the Virginia Ratifying Convention, June 18, 1788. The president ought not to have the power of pardoning because he may frequently pardon crimes which were advised by himself. It may happen at some future day that he will establish a monarchy, destroy the republic. If he has the power of granting pardons before indictment or conviction, may he not stop inquiry and prevent detection? The case of treason ought at least to be accepted. This is a weighty objection with me. There was no one in Virginia nor in the country with a deeper understanding of the Constitution and what it meant than James Madison. Madison understood the force of Mason's objection, and the way to deal with it is, he said, we've got a remedy for this. And the remedy is impeachment. The remedy is impeachment. That's how we got where we are. To change this requires a constitutional amendment. That's brutal. 2/3 majority is required in both the House of Representatives and the Senate to propose an amendment, or a constitutional convention is a means of making the proposal, but then the ratification requires 3/4 of state legislatures to approve the amendment, or if there are state ratifying conventions. So long and short of it is, it's here to stay. It's here to stay. This too shall pass, this debate, but it makes it a hell of a poll question for today at Smerconish.com. So take into account all that I've just shared with you, not just what recently took place with President Donald Trump, but also President Biden on his way out the door, and also past instances that have been high profile. And just ask yourself, do we need this? Do we want this? Do we require, and we have it, by the way, on a state basis as well, in limited form. Remember, a president can pardon for crimes against the United States. As we've discussed many times over, for Donald Trump to have been absolved of his guilt in the New York case, no president could have done anything about that. These are for federal offenses, crimes against the United States. But I'm asking something a little more abstract. Today, do we want presidents to have pardon power? It's a bigger question than Donald Trump. It's a bigger question than Joe Biden. Donald Trump should never have pardoned the violent offenders of the events of January 6th. That's just a no-brainer. Don't take my word for it. Take J.D. Vance's word for it just a couple of days ago. But here's where we are. And now what do you want to do about it? If you could wave a magic wand, would you take away a president's pardon power? Go to Smerconish.com, cast a ballot on that. Can't wait to see how it ends up. 50.06 to 49.94 as I speak.